Welcome to the Old Men of the Three Things with JJ Redick and Tim Legler. We are recording this week, at least I am, remotely. I'm not in New York as I normally am for the Old Man of the Three Things. Kids have spring break this week, so came out to LA for a couple days to do some work, and then I am headed to Cabo tomorrow with the kids, which I'm excited about. A nice little break. Lots of NCAA watching in this household, Tim. Any big takeaways for you from the NCAA tournament, from the opening weekend?
Yeah, I knew this was going to be kind of a wild ride. It is every year, but it's more so than ever. I think I fall in love because I don't have that rooting interest. You know what I mean? It's not, my school's not in it. LaSalle's not in the tournament, you know, and they're sporadically have been. So I kind of just fall in love with these teams, man, that pull off these upsets, and you learn more about them, the players, the teams. Oakland was a great story. I was pulling hard for them to get to the Sweet 16. And my man, Gokul, how about 347 out of 355 field goal attempts from the three-point line? Have you ever, in your wildest imagination, conceived that a player could play and just do one thing in terms of taking shots? I want to see, JJ, I want to see a clip of those 8 shots he didn't take that were 3 strung together to find out the circumstances. Like, how did that happen? Did he leak out and get a breakaway? Like, I don't know, because clearly he's running away. Like, he gets an allergy if he goes inside the line. So, like, I don't know how that happened, but you know, that story was unbelievable to me, and the way that he played against Kentucky, you know, and then I start pulling for those kind of teams. So that's really where I'm at every year with this thing. Fall in love with some Cinderella and just root hard, and gives me a better rooting interest in the games.
I love it. Yeah, the one outlier on his shot chart was definitely the long 2 from the left corner. That's the one that I need to see video of. Like, what are you thinking here? Great tie-in to today's show, because today I want to talk about unsung heroes. Yeah. And this is a show that is not for the algorithm. This is the show that is for people that appreciate every player in the NBA and what their contributions mean to a team. I thought the easiest way to do this today, Tim, was you give me 3 unsung heroes in the Western Conference. I'm going to give you 3 unsung heroes in the Eastern Conference. We'll go one at a time. Why don't we start with you? Give me an unsung hero in the Western Conference.
Well, I'm going to tell you, JJ, I think this guy is going to become one of the huge X factors in the entire league. That's how well he's playing right now. That's how well their team is playing. And they don't, as a group, they're kind of unheralded. It's the Pelicans, and I'm talking about Trey Murphy III. I've loved the guy from the beginning. You know, the combination of the shooting ability he gives you, combined with that length and the defensive tenacity, like that's rare to have that in one package. But it's gone to a whole nother level here in March. His numbers in March, and by the way, this team is 17-6 in the last 23 games. Basically, since February 1st, they're 17-6. They are a legitimate threat in the West. They get almost no attention unless you're kind of talking about Zion. You're not getting attention collectively as a group in what they're doing right now. They are absolutely lurking beneath the surface in the Western Conference. And if they can avoid Denver, I can make an argument for them to make a run to the conference finals. And I can say that for about 5 different teams. Just avoid Denver in the first 2 rounds, and maybe you're the last team standing. New Orleans is one of those teams, and in large part because of Trey Murphy III. To give you an indication of like how good he has been lately, this guy is averaging almost 20 points a game for an entire month, in the month of March. Almost 20 points a game. Now, they've already got 3 guys that are basically, you know, 20-plus point scorers per night on average. I mean, McCollum is not quite there, but every night he's capable of going off for 25 or 30. Then you got Zion and Ingram. Now you have a 4th guy added to the mix. I look at the correlation between what he's doing for them, and you look at what Aaron Gordon did for Denver when they brought him in as that 4th piece that guards and then also has the ability on certain nights when it's required to give you 20 points of offense, particularly if you're not going to get enough attention. So I look at him shooting basically 50% from the field, 45 from the 3, and a high volume 3-point shooter, and 19 points a game. He's also chipping in almost 6 boards a game. So for your small forward position to go get you 6 boards a game. And then the last component, like, he doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't make mistakes. He's not a high playmaker guy, JJ, but he's going to move the ball where it needs to go, and he's going to be decisive with it. to the tune of almost a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio too. So you're not even he's getting a little bit of playmaking in there and then just never makes mistakes with the basketball. But most importantly, it's his length defensively, and then the way that he is a pressure release valve for Zion Williamson, for Brandon Ingram. When those guys draw blitzes, Trey Murphy III is the guy that's usually been the beneficiary. And when I say he's one of the biggest X factors in the entire league, that is not an overstatement, because he's that important to the Pelicans, and he is going to have huge moments where we're talking about him because he has his fingerprints all over a run that they make in an important game, whether it's the first round, second round, whatever it may be. He's going to have multiple games within series as long as they're playing where we are going to be talking. He's going to be one of the first names we're talking about afterwards, because we're going to note his defense, and then he's going to have some games where he makes 6-7 threes in the postseason because of the defensively loading up against some of their star players. So I can't say enough about how well he has played. And as a result, the Pelicans are hot and they're lurking. They're a threat.
Yeah. This is a guy who had off-season surgery, got off to a slow start once he was back on the floor, missed a good chunk of time to start the season. And it pains me to say this, because I don't like Trey, but he's playing great basketball. He's playing great, but I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I like the call that he's an X factor within a playoff series. I certainly love him as that like fourth option. I think what's interesting about what you just said, the Aaron Gordon comparison is interesting to me because of the way that Trey complements these stars on the Pelicans. He can play off the ball. You can have him in a spread pick and roll where he's attacking closeouts or shooting threes. You can run some offense through him, particularly the dynamic, depending on how teams match up within a playoff series. Him setting inverted pick and rolls on Zion Williamson on the right side of the floor, where he can set the screen, either force a switch or Zion gets around his defender and attacks the basket, or he sets a ghost screen where he slips out to the 3-point line and then all of a sudden creates some chaos. The defense has to react to that. I think that's what stands out to me, is the way that he complements the rest of the Pelicans' star offensive players in CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, who, thank God, is likely only going to be out a couple weeks, hopefully, after that hyperextended knee. But Trey has just elevated his game to another level from what we've seen in the past. This is a serious run from him. And I don't want to, Tim, I don't want to be these guys that are just like shouting the same thing over and over again. But I am serious about the New Orleans Pelicans, as are you. This is a really good basketball team. If they are healthy and whole when the playoffs start, they're going to be a tough out. They're going to be an absolutely a tough out.
They've got so many guys that are slotted into a particular role, that embrace the role, thrive in the role, and they're deep in terms of the number of guys that impact the game. And when I watch them play, it's amazing the number of names that will come up during the course of a game and the little stretches of impact that they have. But now Murphy has taken it to a different place where it's now he's like one of the guys. It's not just like, hey, we're going to get bit contributions out of him and he'll have a little spurt here in the first half and a little spurt in the second half, and there's his 12 points. That's not what we're talking about. I know he missed the beginning of the year, but he played a couple of months prior to March, and he had 4 20-point games total. He's had 5 in March. That's the heater that this guy is on right now, and his confidence level is through the roof. And by the way, another part, I like what you said to kind of tie in the Aaron Gordon statement that I made. Another way in which they're similar is they can make plays just being athletic at the end of a breakdown of a play, late in the clock. You could throw the ball up to those guys. Like Murphy's great as a weak side slasher, running out in transition, throw him a lob. Aaron Gordon could do the same thing. So they can go generate offense just by being athletic as well. Now, obviously, Aaron Gordon is not the shooter that Trey Murphy III is. And that's a big part of his game, is he's going to space the floor, but that's not all he is. He slashes from the weak side when there's traps. He can run it. He can get on the offensive glass. You can throw him lobs if you've got numbers on the break. So he's turning into a really complete offensive player and an impactful player. And I can't wait to see if what I said turns out to be true. Like, get them in a first round series, and who knows who that's going to be. There's still so much to figure out. They sit there at 5 right now. They're a game and a half out of 4. They're a game and a half up on the 6th place team. So we don't really know where they're going to be slotted, but whatever that first round series is, I can't wait to see what the impact that Trey Murphy III is going to have, because I just think it's all coming together for him right now at the most important time as we head into these last 10 games or so, getting ready for the playoffs.
All right. Normally I don't do this, but because 2 of my unsung heroes in the East are on the same basketball team, we're gonna snake this like we do the draft. So I'm gonna go with 2 of my 3 guys right now. So Julius Randle got injured on January 27th against the Miami Heat. Since then, the Knicks are 13-11. They've had some other injuries. OG was out of the lineup for a long time, came back for a while. Now he's back out of the lineup. They have currently won 5 of their last 6 games. They're sitting in 4th place still, just 1 game back of Cleveland for 3rd place, which, believe me, I think would be very advantageous to avoid Boston in the 2nd round. They are a game up in the loss column on 5th place Orlando, just in a good spot right now. And Jalen Brunson, of course, is going to get the headlines for this team. Jalen Brunson has had an all-star season. He certainly is in contention for an all-NBA spot. He's had a fantastic season. There's probably a little bit of buzz on him for the MVP, all that stuff. Jalen Brunson gets the headlines. And I have talked a lot about Isaiah Hartenstein and his role and how good he has been for the New York Knicks. So I'm going to give some love to a couple guys that I frankly just have not praised this year, and they deserve it because they've been awesome. First of all is Miles McBride. Miles McBride, just to contextualize what he's doing right now for the New York Knicks. In November, he played 4.5 minutes a game. In October, he played even less, 4.3 minutes a game. In December, he played 6.6 minutes a game. They started playing him in January. That's when the Knicks defense just really took off, averaged about 15 minutes a game. February, he's up to 23 minutes a game. March, he's up to 32 minutes a game over 10 games in March. I just think about that for a second, though. A guy who was essentially not in the rotation and is now being asked to play 30, and by the way, he played 48 the other night, 30-some minutes a night to keep your playoff seeding alive, to keep your momentum going. And he has responded. He's shooting 45% from 3 in the month of March, 42% from 3 for the season after shooting 25% his rookie year and 29% his second season. Now, some of that, of course, Tim, you know this because we live this at different times in our career. When you are not a constant in the rotation, when you don't know night to night what your minutes are going to be and how your shots are going to look, it's very difficult in the NBA. It's very difficult in the NBA to shoot a good percentage when you are not in rhythm. And he has been in rhythm since January, and he shot the shit out of the ball. And I tell you why this is so important. Because with all these injuries, what has happened is a guy like Dante DiVincenzo, a guy like Josh Hart, who I'm going to get to in a second, they have been overextended a little bit in terms of their role. They've been overextended in their minutes, and at times, especially late in the shot clock, they get overextended in terms of their offensive role. With all these injuries, Bogdanovich and Alec Burks, who have came over at the trade deadline, they just haven't shot well. Bogdanovich is at 37% from the field, 34% from 3. Burks is 32% from the field, 30% from 3. And I know this because I lived it. It's very hard to get traded in the middle of the season and have sort of the same efficiency on a different team with different teammates, different plays, all that stuff. McBride has been so important to the functionality of this team on both sides of the basketball, in particular, his shooting. As it's like, wow. I mean, I remember I've been to a bunch of Knicks games this year. I obviously watched them play a bunch. I've called their games. And all of a sudden, it felt a couple months ago, you're like, oh, wow, this guy is coming in with this level of energy, this level of defensive tenacity, and he's going to shoot over 40% from three for this team. That's a game changer. That is an absolute game changer. It's kept them in the hunt for home court, and it's certainly earned him a right to be in a playoff rotation.
Everything you said is so true. I love the stuff about how difficult it is to have any semblance of rhythm whatsoever when you're a shooter scorer and you have played as sporadically as he has played, to be able to kick it into this gear when he's absolutely needed to because of just the numbers dictate it. They don't have enough bodies to play these minutes. And he's had 5 games in March where he played 44 minutes or more. I mean, nobody in the NBA plays those kind of minutes anymore except Josh Hart and Miles McBride. Like, they're the only 2 guys in the league that play these kind of minutes. When you're thinking about constantly preservation, it's 38 is where guys are capped out a lot of times. So he's out there every minute because they have nobody else. They don't have a choice. They have to go there. And man, has he responded. And I think, look, he's taken advantage of the fact that when you go into now playing against the Knicks, it's definitely not going to be the first name that you're going to be talking about when you talk about the scouting report. Like, you're really trying to deal with Jalen Brunson, and he's taking advantage of some opportunities where teams didn't play him aggressively early in the game. This guy can flat out string together shots. So he has found his rhythm, and we'll see now what happens as he starts to be a little bit more of a focal point defensively. But you're 100% right. Like, where would the Knicks be, as crazy as it sounds, without Miles McBride right now, with everything they have dealt with, and a guy just answering the call when they had to have it from him in a year in which he has been sporadic at best or an afterthought for their rotation? You now get the opportunity. You come in and capitalize on it to this extent. And now going forward, look, they're going to get guys back, and we'll see how that affects everything. But you now have a guy that Tom Thibodeau is going to have faith and confidence in.
Yeah, there it is. There it is, right there.
Right, that's the difference now. You've got another guy that you're not going to hesitate to go to, even in important moments in a playoff series. That's what he has established for himself now with this run that he's had over the course of March.
And of course, you said, where would they be without Miles McBride? Where would they be without Josh Hart? Josh Hart, Josh, you still can't shoot. You still can't shoot, but that's okay, because you do everything else so fucking damn well. I talked about DiVincenzo being a little overextended at times, I think, with just Brunson as the primary option, on the offensive end. Josh Hart, you could certainly talk about that in terms of, his shooting numbers. And of course, his minutes, they've really built up. But look, this is a guy who didn't have any triple doubles in his career. He's had 5 triple doubles over the last 20 some games. In February, he averaged over 10 rebounds a game, 5.2 assists. In March, he's averaging almost 12 rebounds a game and 5.4 assists. I always will remember this conversation I had with BJ Armstrong my rookie year. He was talking about Dwight Howard. We were at dinner after one of the games. I wasn't playing a lot. We was just kind of talking about the NBA. And we were talking about Dwight, and he said, one of the reasons Dwight is so valuable and so good is because he rebounds outside of his area. Now, Dwight was 6'11" with the wingspan and all the strength in the world, crazy hops, all that stuff. Josh Hart is under 6'6". In terms of players under 6'6" that rebound like him, it's only Brandon Pajimski of the Golden State Warriors. Josh Hart, at his size, and he's an athlete, but he's not an uber athlete, and he's strong and he's quick, but he's not uber strong or uber quick. He rebounds outside of his area as well as any guard I've seen. He pursues the basketball. He gets rebounds in traffic, long rebounds. He ends up with basketballs that he has no business ending up with. And I think what's important here is the Knicks have taken on this identity. They have embraced this gritty culture. And of course, it starts with Tibbs and JB and all that. But they have a group now with a real identity. And I don't think there's anybody on this team that has embodied it more than Josh Hart. And I'll say this, that stretch with Randall out, 13 and 11, as I mentioned, their offense hasn't been great. They're bottom third offensively, but they've been a top 10 defense. They've been one of the best teams all season in terms of creating second chance points and offensive rebounds. This is a group that has just embraced the gritty. They've embraced toughness, and Josh Hart embodies that as well as anyone.
And I sit here and watch him, and I still can't believe the rebounding numbers that I'm looking at. You got JJ in the history of this league, or certainly in the last 20 years. Let's just take it in the modern era. There's only one other guard that you can even look at to look at these kind of rebounding numbers for this long a period of time. He's averaging almost 11 rebounds a game for a 25-game stretch. The only other guy to do that's Westbrook in his prime when he was in Oklahoma City. And he was getting double-digit rebounds every night and averaging a triple-double. But Josh Hart's had games where it was like 17 boards, 19 rebounds in a game for a guy, as you mentioned, that's basically our height, maybe just a little bit taller than you and I.
Yeah.
What's amazing about him, and you talk about rebounding outside of his area, the other thing that he does is the way he goes up with his back on a bigger player. When the ball goes up, he's technically sound. He's not just going and running and jumping after balls because he's not big enough or athletic enough to do that. So he does it more like you would do in a drill. Like he's going to get his back on a guy, hold him there. But some of these guys are 6'8" and up. Ball comes off, it goes up. Both guys jump. The guy behind him is going up vertically, so he's not going to foul him over the back. Both of their hands get to the ball basically at the same time. Josh Hart ends up with every single one of those. Every one of them. He's obviously got great strength in his hands. He's got, they're glue-like when he gets his fingertips on a ball. It's his. But the fact that he comes out with these tough rebounds and what that means to your team defense, when you can play a smaller lineup, which they do at times, and you're not giving up as much on the glass as you're expecting to because of what you're getting out of your two guard, I just wish he could get those shooting percentages up, JJ, just a little bit.
We're gonna work on the shot this summer, Tim. We've already committed to
from
each
the
other.
three, man.
We've already committed to each other.
23% from the three, brother. I mean, I don't get it because I know he wasn't a big time deep shooter in college either, but he was a very good scorer. And he was more like a slasher, attacker, mid-range guy. But you would think this many years now in the league, he's 29 years old. You would think now, like he would understand, like this is what I have to do. And look, maybe for some guys, like that line at that level is almost like a psychological barrier. And there have been other players that were like that, like great from 18 feet and in. You put him out there at 23, 24 feet. It just, there's something about that shot that does not feel natural to them. To his credit, he doesn't take as many as he could in this era of the NBA because he knows it's not a comfortable shot. He has found other ways to impact the game as a winner that most guards in this league would not be able to do with those shooting percentages. And I'm not trying to knock him for his shooting percentages. I'm saying that's the kind of impact he's having defensively and on the boards and just leaving skin on the floor. Nobody's on the floor more to Josh Hart in the course of a game going after loose balls. He does so many things to help you win, despite the fact that he's really struggled and had a really, really bad year shooting the basketball.
All right, give me your next unsung hero in the Western Conference.
All right, I'm going to go and look. This guy's he's older. He's gotten credit throughout his career, but I don't know right now what Minnesota would be doing without Mike Conley. When you look at what's happened to their front line and the number of bodies they haven't had and the lineups they've had to play, Mike Conley is not at this stage of his career expected to get 20 points a game. Like that's not what he's doing. He's out there to get you, 10, 11, 12 points a game, run the show, organize them, make the game easier for Anthony Edwards so he can play more just like an attacking guard, set the table for guys, be smart, manage the game, quality possessions when you have to have it. Like that's what he's supposed to be doing. And he didn't have a 20-point game all season. JJ, he's had 3 in the last 5 games because they had to have it. All 3 of those were wins. And they're against 2 of them against good teams. Beat the Clippers, beat Cleveland, and beat Utah in the other game. So the fact that he was able to do that when he's well past that point of his career, when he should be asked to do that, and it never really was his big job description either in Memphis, like in his glory days. He was a phenomenal pick and roll player, great defender, but they had other guys that were more like, the gravy train for them. Yeah. This is different. Like he's thrust into this situation. Again, Minnesota, you talked about the Knicks, like trying to hold on with guys out to where they're at. Same thing with Minnesota. I mean, they were number 1 seed. They've dropped to 3. They're trying to hang on right there. And Mike Conley is at least giving them a chance to play like 500 basketball while Towns is out, Gobert's been out, Nas Reed is out. And I've been so impressed with what a pro he is, and doing something like that at this stage of his career. Most guys, once you try to turn that page, very hard to dial that back up again, even if your team does ask you to do it. And Mike Conley's done it, and he's been great for them. And as a result, they're keeping their head above water right now.
I don't think it's a coincidence, Tim, that going back to last year at the end of the season when he joined the team, and throughout this season where they've had a tremendous regular season, they're a more than competent basketball team since the addition of Mike Conley. And to me, he functions as a sort of a coach on the floor. He's the word game manager, when we talk about quarterbacks, gets thrown around in such a negative way, but he was a traditional point guard when he was in his prime in Memphis. Mike Conley, I'm a firm believer in this. If he was playing in a different system, he would have been a 25 to 30 point per game scorer, and he would have made multiple All-Star games, all of that stuff. He does what is required to give his team a chance to win. That's why you bring up these last 3 20-point games. It was required that he had to be more aggressive. He recognizes the situation. He organizes. And I love that he allows Anthony Edwards to be Anthony Edwards, right? He's the perfect complement to Anthony Edwards at this point in both of their careers, which I think is really interesting. I also just have a soft spot in my heart for guards on the other side of 30, approaching sort of the end here, who are still able at his size to still able to have such an impact on the game of basketball. Just great call there. All right, you go next. We'll snake it to you. Last guy in the Western Conference for you, unsung hero.
Well, I have to. You picked 2 guys from the same team, and so you paired them together. So I know I'm only supposed to have 3, but there's no way to separate these 2 guys because they're basically, it's a 2-headed version of one player, and it's the 2 guys that are playing center right now for the Dallas Mavericks, Lively and Gafford. And I just wanted people to comprehend some of these numbers. Okay. So basically this month, since the beginning of the month, take away a game or 2 right at the beginning, but this stretch that they've had where they're hot again, Gafford and Lively combined are shooting 82% from the field. 82%. And anybody that wants to dismiss that, and Gafford had that long streak, of 33 makes in a row. Anybody wants to dismiss that? Oh, well, all he's doing is dunking the ball. Do you not understand how important having that threat is for a guy like Luka Doncic, a guy like Kyrie Irving, and how dangerous that's making their team? Basically, I look at these 2 guys as one center for the Mavericks because they're so similar in what they do. Gafford's just a little bit better at scoring the basketball in other ways than Lively, who's pretty much just going to catch it, dunk it, or get a pocket pass and finish it. Gafford can do a little bit more than that when he gets his hands on the basketball, but for the most part, they do exactly the same thing. They play 41 minutes a night, so they're combining for one center body. They're giving you these averages: 82% from the field during that stretch, 24, 12, and 3 blocks. That's what you're getting out of your center spot. And I don't even know. I didn't even do the math on the offensive rebounding and the second chances that they give you. It's 12 raw rebounds a game combined. I don't know how many of those are actually on the offensive end that gives you multiple opportunities. They are a huge reason. When I watch Dallas play now, Derrick Jones Jr. is another guy. The threat that he is to finish at any time, if you turn your head or you're overloading too much too early to Luka, and you're not aware of the baseline cutters or the guy rolling down the lane from the top. These are bailout plays for Luka Doncic, and to lesser extent Kyrie Irving, mainly Luka. And as a result, JJ, I'm looking at Dallas, man. I think they've got every bit as good a chance as anybody. And when we get there, we're 10 games away or so. We've got a few weeks left here in the regular season. 3 weeks from today, actually, is the last game of the year. I'm not going to be shocked if we get to that point. And again, if they're out of Denver's bracket, if they're not going to get them in the second round or the first round, not going to be shocked to hear me say, man, I think they're going to the conference finals. And these two guys are an enormous reason for it. And by the way, their record also as a team, it's best record in the league in clutch games. So you get into a close game inside 5 minutes, that's the best record in the NBA. And because of those two dynamic offensive players they have and the balance of threats around them with two rim runners and then enough shooting to complement that, I can't really even fathom the numbers they're putting up. 82% from the field, two players playing the same position. I don't care if that's a 3-game sample size, much less basically a month.
Well, I go back to the very first game of the season that I called, which was opening night for ESPN. So it was the second night of the regular season. And I had Wemby's debut in San Antonio against Dallas. And two things stood out to me, and they're to piggyback off of sort of what you just said. Number one, Jay Kidd in the pregame meeting was talking about how, hey, we're really comfortable playing in 5-point games. We feel like we have Luka and Kyrie. We're comfortable playing in close games. Our defense just has to be good enough, right?
Right.
Then I go out and call the game, and I'm like, holy shit, Dereck Lively is he was a monster in that game.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
I was like, Dereck Lively is a perfect fit. We brought him up, I think it was last week or the week before, with his defense against Nikola Jokic in that game
right.
against the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday, where he was, I think Jokic was 2 for 8 with Lively as the contesting defender, battled him, was physical with him. And then you get Gafford at the deadline, who offers a lot of the same stuff, right? He's going to put pressure on the rim. He's a backline defender, obviously a little bit more experienced than Lively. To me, it goes back to the compliment thing. They're perfect complements to Luka and Kyrie Irving. And I will agree with you. I'm going to agree with you on the sort of big picture for Dallas here. They're in that sort of next group for sure, where it's like, depending on how these matchups shake out, could absolutely see them in the conference finals. I love it. All right, let's wrap this up. I got one more guy, and like this, I just feel like this guy, outside of, Celtics Twitter, doesn't get a lot of love. And no, it's not Derrick White. I've given Derrick White enough praise. It's not Derrick White. I'm watching that Milwaukee game the other night, and Payton Pritchard comes in the game, and it's like, oh, there's certain guys, when they enter the game, the energy shifts, the flow shifts, and more times than not, when Payton Pritchard comes in the game, that energy shifts. Joe Mazzulla always talks about his competitive nature, just his ability to bring it every single night. And there were so many question marks about, this top 6 is amazing, but they have no bench. Look, Sam Hauser's been great. Al Horford's been great for the season and the role that he's been asked to have this year. He's been great. Payton Pritchard has been awesome. This is a team. I mean, I was looking at the lineup data this morning. Payton Pritchard is part of the 4th most and 5th most used lineups for the Boston Celtics. And both those lineups have, a +8 and a +12. I can't remember the exact number. Like, he's impacting the winning. Now, Joe Mazzulla has a lot of options for how he wants to stagger his starters, obviously. And depending on matchups, he can play Sam Hauser more. He can play Payton Pritchard more. He can play Al Horford more. I get it. Pritchard, night to night, has been asked to do different things at times. He's shooting 39% from the field. He's got nearly a 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. You're talking about a guy who's coming in the game, getting rebounds, getting assists, scoring the basketball efficiently in limited minutes. And you know what? He has some nights. He has some nights where he gets a lot of minutes. And more times than not, the guy produces. He's a baller. He is a hooper's hooper. That's how I look at Payton Pritchard. The guy loves to play. He loves to compete. And he's having a fantastic season.
By the way, I love Payton Pritchard, man. And when I went out there, did the Suns Celtics game for radio out in Phoenix, and I'm watching Payton Pritchard. He comes in the game, and I'm watching him, and like, you cannot really understand how quick he is until you're like right there seeing it in front of you. And like, the sound his sneakers make and how fast his feet are moving relative to everybody else. And it might not come through like if you're watching the game on TV because he's really small and he's not getting a lot of separation from guys. But that just shows you like how hard he is working to get the separation that he does at his size. Shooting the ball with incredible amount of confidence. Like he got his money and then they didn't really use him a ton in the beginning of the season. I was kind of like, what's going on with Payton Pritchard? Like, I don't understand. Because every time I saw him last year, I thought this guy's a spark. Every time I see him, and I don't want to compare him to TJ McConnell, but I always felt the way about TJ McConnell too.
White dude, bro.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe I should have found a different example. I don't know. But I guess
different players, players, by the way, but same sentiment in terms of that spark. I agree with you on that.
I'm not comparing their games at all. What I'm comparing is like you'll go stretches sometimes where they're not playing as much, and you don't really understand it because every time you see them, you feel like they're dramatically affecting the game. That's how I feel about Payton Pritchard. And I think, by the way, the inconsistent minutes are behind him now. I mean, he averaged 27 minutes a game in March. So and this is a team that is rolling and expected to win a championship. He's playing 26 minutes a game for them. You talked about his assist to turnover ratio. A guy that size, you think about the length that he is seeing, which means arms and passing lanes, deflected passes. He's turning the ball over once every 26 minutes. 26 minutes of playing time. He turns the ball over one time a game. It's unbelievable. And shooting almost 44% from the 3-point line. Again, at his size, that's a difficult thing to do because it's just hard to get that kind of separation to do it. I think he's been one of the big stories for the Celtics. Honestly, we talk so much about their starting five and how great they are, the versatility there. Payton Pritchard has been that consistent jolt that they've gotten every single time he has entered the game, and he's playing the best basketball of his career right now. And it's just like another weapon. The rich get richer, the deep get deeper with the Boston Celtics. So now he's a problem for people.
I'm going to tell you why this matters. I'm going to tell you why it matters. And this is not prognosticating. This is not me predicting that Payton Pritchard will win the Celtics a playoff game. I would say in the history of the NBA, and certainly in the 15 years that I played and the 3 years that I've been covering it, in watching the playoffs and playing in the playoffs, there are times when even great teams, even the best teams, even teams that go on to win, they need that jolt.
Oh, yeah.
You think about Christian Brown in a couple of those games in the finals last year against the Miami Heat. How important was he, right? That's the type. I always think back to the 2010 NBA Finals. Literally, Nate Robinson and Glenn Davis against the Los Angeles Lakers won a game for the Boston Celtics. Doc used to talk about that all the time. There's a time where a guy, he's not going to go for 45, but a guy will come in and significantly alter the energy and the course of the game. And Payton Pritchard is one of those guys that can do that. He's absolutely one of those guys that can do it.
Sometimes it might mean a 10-point night, but those 10 points came at a time when somebody was out of the game and you're trying to match buckets with the other team. I'll take it a step further. You say there will be times. I actually think in almost every win that a team has, you can point to somebody that night, and you don't know who it's going to be. It could be somebody different every night on the good teams, but there's somebody that gives you that unexpected surge of offense or whatever it may be, shot making at an important time in the game. Hey, maybe it's a situation where you're down 10 and you got 2 stars out of the game. And when they check back in, maybe they're only down 6, but it could have been 18. And this one particular player, or like 2 role players, did enough in that stretch to kind of keep it and stabilize it, and now allow your stars to be able to try to, make up the difference, take over the game, and eventually win the game.
It's absolutely right. Basketball, it's funny because I think in certain sports, you can point to a play, right? A pick six, a fumble at the 3-yard line.
Right.
Even in soccer, it's soccer. I think for most fans, they think of it as these singular events, but I know there's a build-up to scoring a goal, right? But for the average fan, you say, oh, well, it was that cross that Messi headed in, right? That was the play that mattered. In basketball, it is so much about a series of plays, a series of moments. The game and the tide just move along, and it's that thing that nobody's looking for. that stretch in the second quarter, as you just said, that stuff matters so much.
Yeah.
Think about last year. It's a great example of it. Denver is awful in the non-Jokic minutes. They're awful, right? They move to Gordon at the 5. Once the playoffs start, that's their rotation. And it wasn't like they were blitzing teams in those minutes, but they were enough. They held their own. They were enough that when Jokic got back in the game, a 4-point lead was still a 4-point lead. A 6-point deficit wasn't a 22-point deficit. That stuff matters. And Payton Pritchard's one of those guys that will make a difference in a playoff series. Tim, always fun chopping it up.
Yeah, man. Enjoyed it.